An old black woman says to the Korean Mafia boss, "Hello, sir. My granddaughter has a birthmark just like yours." What? The first thing people notice is the silence. Not the polite kind. Not the pause between conversations or the hush when someone walks into a room. This is a different silence. The kind that settles into the walls. The kind that makes the steam above the bowls seem to curl slower, like even the air is holding its breath. A small Korean diner hums with warm light and clinking cutlery until the door opens and the temperature of the room drops. Woo-jin walks in like he owns the air. Not loud, not rushing, just certain. A clean maroon suit, hair slicked back. Behind him, 3 men in black suits slide into the room. Min-jae, Kyung-ho, and Young-jae, their eyes scanning corners, exits, faces. They don't speak. And they don't need to. Every customer in that diner already understands what kind of men they are. A waitress pauses mid-step. A trucker at the counter keeps his eyes fixed on his bowl. A couple near the window quietly signals for their check. Nobody looks up. Nobody moves unless they have to. And then Woo-jin sits at the counter, calm, unhurried. Korean words fall from his mouth like coins, quiet instructions, and his men don't smile, don't laugh. They just watch the room like it's a chessboard and they already know which pieces matter. Then someone does the unthinkable. From the end of the counter, an elderly black woman steps forward. She wears a bright patterned dress. Her posture is straight, her hands are steady. The room expects her to shrink back, to do what everyone else is doing. Keep her head down, stay invisible, and let the danger pass. She doesn't. She looks Woo-jin directly in the eyes, calm, clear, unmoved, and says, as if she's commenting on the weather, "Hello, sir. My granddaughter has a birthmark just like yours." The diner stops breathing. Woo-jin's fingers, resting near a cup, freeze. Not from anger, from something heavier, something that lives deeper than a threat. Min-jae's gaze snaps to the woman's face, reading her, brave, foolish, or both. But Woo-jin doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, doesn't even stand. He does something more frightening. He turns his head, slowly, deliberately, exposing the dark, ink-shaped birthmark on his temple, testing whether she really saw it, really meant it. And when he speaks, his voice is low, controlled, careful. "Your granddaughter, her name." The woman, her name is Adana, doesn't flinch, and doesn't hesitate. Adace. The name lands wrong, like a key clicking in a lock that hasn't been touched in years. Woo-jin's face doesn't change, not visibly, but the men around him catch it. A quiet tension in his jaw, a micro flinch behind one eye, the way his shoulders lift, just a fraction, as if a memory just grabbed him by the collar. Something inside Woo-jin's chest has just cracked wide open. And nobody in that diner, not even his own men, fully understands why. Now, before this story goes any further, let me ask you something. When an elderly woman walks into a room full of men like Woo-jin, what do you expect to happen? Be honest. Do you expect her to be ignored? Dismissed? Do you expect fear to win? The way it almost always does in rooms like this? Most people would. And that's exactly what everyone in that diner expected, except for one woman. Adana, 72 years old, a grandmother, a woman who has spent her life watching the world underestimate people who don't fit neatly into its boxes. And here's what makes her dangerous, not to Woo-jin, but to the silence that almost swallowed her granddaughter whole. Adana wasn't afraid, not because she didn't understand the risk, but because she understood something Woo-jin didn't expect anyone in that room to know. The birthmark isn't just a mark. It's a thread, and it connects 2 people across 12 years of silence, a past neither of them fully understands, and a secret that someone, somewhere, is already trying to use as a weapon. So how did a birthmark on a teenage girl become the reason a Korean mafia boss just lost his composure in a diner full of witnesses? To understand that, we have to go back. 12 years. Back to a night when Woo-jin wasn't boss yet, when he was just a young man with too many enemies and too few exits. A deal gone wrong. An alley behind an apartment complex. Blood, dizziness, and the kind of anger that comes when the world has confirmed every dark thing you already believed about it. And a tired mother, not a savior, not a hero, just a woman with groceries and sharp eyes, spotted him from a window. That woman's name was Adana, and the story, the real story, starts there. Hello, my friends and loved ones. Thanks for joining me on this beautiful story. As we continue this story, kindly take a moment to subscribe to this channel. I like the video, and I love to always hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it at your end right now? Thank you for subscribing. 12 years earlier, Wu Jin wasn't boss yet. He was a young man with too many enemies and too few exits. A deal had gone wrong, the kind that doesn't announce itself. It just unravels. And when it did, Wu Jin ran. Through a service alley behind an apartment complex. Bleeding, dizzy, angry at the world for being exactly what he'd always expected. A place that took first and asked questions never. His knees gave. The wall caught him, and for a long stretch of dark seconds, the only thing keeping him conscious was his own breathing. Ragged, too loud, a sound that felt like it could betray him. He didn't see the window above him, but someone saw him. Adana had been putting groceries away when the movement caught her eye. A shape in the alley that didn't belong. A person, slumped, still. She didn't rush outside. She didn't call the police. Not because she didn't believe in the law. She believed in it the way you believe in something that has let you down enough times to teach you its shape. She knew what happened when a bleeding stranger was handed to a system not built to hold him gently. Wrong questions first, paperwork second, and the person lost somewhere in between. So she did what she believed in instead. She called Amara, a community advocate who knew which doors to knock on and which to leave alone. Someone skilled at helping the vulnerable navigate crises without getting swallowed by the system. Amara answered on the second ring. Don't move him. I'm coming. Together, Adana with steady hands, Amara with steady instincts, they got Wu Jin patched up. No questions about gangs, no lectures, just first aid, water, and one hard boundary spoken by Adana in a voice that left no room for negotiation. You leave the violence outside my door, and you don't come back here unless you're ready to live differently. Wu Jin laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was unfamiliar. People usually wanted something from him. Money, protection, fear. Adana wanted change, the rarest ask anyone had ever made of him, but his eyes wandered, the way a wounded animal's eyes wander, checking whether it's safe. And they landed on the corner of the room. A little girl, asleep on the couch, hugging a stuffed animal, her face peaceful in the low lamplight. Adai's, and there, and at her temple, small, ink-dark, unmistakable, was the birthmark. Wu Jin stared at it longer than he meant to. He'd hated that mark his whole life. It made him feel stamped, branded, like something about him had been decided before he ever got a say. On Adaizi, it looked like a signature, like she belonged to something bigger than fear. He turned to Adana. The question came out quiet. Who's her father? Adana met his eyes. No hesitation. I don't know. Her mother, Amina, never told me. She passed when Adaiz was small. Amina. The name settled into the room like a stone into still water. He said nothing after that, but before he left, before he disappeared back into the life already waiting for him, he did one thing. He placed a small coin in Adana's palm, an old habit, his family's way of saying, I owe this. I know I owe this. Then he looked at her, and for the first time that night, his voice wasn't guarded. Keep her safe, he said. The world is loud. Protect her quiet. And then he was gone. The memory stayed, though, like a thorn buried too deep to pull out, too close to the surface to forget. And now, 12 years later, that quiet was being hunted. Back in the diner, the present reasserts itself. Adana lowers her phone. Her voice is steady, but something underneath it has shifted, something that wasn't there before. Not fear, exactly. Urgency. She's been receiving messages, she says. Anonymous. No name, no number you can trace. They started small, vague, then they got specific. Wu Jin doesn't move. What do they say? Adana doesn't repeat the exact words. She doesn't need to. The shape of them is enough, language that implies ownership. That implies Adaizi's mark means she belongs somewhere, to someone, that her body is a door someone else holds the key to. The diner is still. But the stillness has changed. It isn't curiosity anymore. It's the kind of quiet that comes when a room senses something predatory and can't see where it's standing. Wu Jin's eyes go cold, not at Adana, at the invisible thing behind the messages. Then he speaks, and his voice isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. A birthmark is not a claim, he says, slowly, like he's stating a law. It's not ownership. It's not permission. It's not an invitation. It's ink, that's all. He looks at Adana. Whoever is sending those messages isn't family. They're criminals. It isn't sentiment. It's principle, spoken by a man who has spent his life inside a world that runs on exactly this logic. He knows it works, and he knows it's wrong, not because someone told him, but because he felt what it does to a person. From the inside, the pivot happens fast, quiet, no chaos. Minjae is already on his phone. A single look from Woo Jin was all it took. Kyung-ho shifts his weight, angling his body toward the door, mapping exits the way he does in every room he enters. Young-jae stays close to Woo Jin, but his eyes are on Adana, not watching her, watching for her. We trace the source, Min-jae says, voice low. The messages. Even if the number is buried, there's a thread. There's always a thread. Woo Jin nods once, then he says something that changes the shape of what comes next. We don't do this alone. We bring in Adebayo. Min-jae looks up. Adebayo, a name that carries weight in certain rooms, a principled investigator, careful, the kind of person who follows evidence the way a surgeon follows a nerve, precisely, without unnecessary cutting. Someone who understands that protecting a person means doing it right, not just fast. This goes through the proper channel, Woo Jin says, not ours. But Adaze doesn't know any of this yet. She's walking home from a school event, earbuds in, bag over one shoulder, phone half dead in her pocket. The evening is ordinary. The streetlights are coming on in that slow, amber way they do in autumn. Nothing about the air feels wrong, except the car. A dark sedan, parked too long on the same stretch of road she passed yesterday. The driver doesn't look at her, doesn't move, just sits there. An engine idling, watching the street the way someone watches a thing they're waiting for. Adiz doesn't speed up. She doesn't look back. She just notices, files it. The way teenagers do when the world has taught them, quietly, that not all attention is safe. She saw the same car 2 days ago. Different street. Same feeling. Tonight, it's closer. And then her phone lights up. A new message. No name, no number. She reads it. Her jaw tightens. Somewhere across town, Adana's voice comes through. Quiet, steady, but carrying the full weight of what she already knows. They're getting bolder. Woo Jin's plan is simple. Move Adaze somewhere safe. Quietly, quickly. Before whoever is sending those messages decides to stop watching and start acting. But Adana stops him before he finishes the sentence. You don't move her, she says, not angry. I affirm. Not without her knowing. Not without her say-so. She is not an object to be relocated. Woo Jin doesn't argue. He already knows she's right. So they bring Adaze in. She arrives, not confused, not tearful, not the frightened child Woo Jin's memory still holds. She's 17 now, sharp-eyed, shoulders squared. She looks at Woo Jin the way someone looks at a person they've already decided to test. Adana explains. Woo Jin listens. Min-jae stands near the door, present but giving her space. Nobody in the room talks about Adaze. They talk to her. And then Adaze does the thing no one expected. She doesn't say yes. She doesn't say thank you. She says, okay, but we do this the right way. My life isn't a secret. I want answers, with proof. The room holds that for a moment. Woo Jin looks at her, and something in his expression shifts. Not surprise, recognition, the same stubbornness he's seen in Adana, the same refusal to let fear decide. Agreed, he says. Adebayo arrives within the hour. He doesn't look like someone who walks into danger. He looks like someone who walks into evidence, quiet, deliberate, carrying a worn leather bag. He listens. Then he lays out what comes next, not as a plan, but as a process. First, preserve the messages, everyone, unread, untouched, exactly as they arrived. The chain of proof matters. Second, verify whether the source number is spoofed. It almost certainly is, and the spoofing itself will tell them something. Third, check for data breaches. Someone, somewhere, may have accessed information about Adaze, her school, her schedule, her grandmother's address, through a system that was supposed to be private. Fourth, consider legal protective measures. Not later. Now. Adaze nods along. She's not performing compliance. She's tracking the logic, following each step the way someone does when they're building a picture in their own mind. But there's a name underneath all of it. A name that keeps surfacing, quietly, in the spaces between the steps. Amina. Adaze's mother. The woman who never named the father, who passed when Adaze was small and left behind almost nothing. No documents, no explanations, no thread to pull. Except there is a thread, and Adebayo has already found it. He catches Woo Jin's eye, and the look that passes between them is enough. Someone knew about Amina's past. Someone who isn't Adana. Woo Jin is running the math the way he always does. Threat, exposure, consequence. And if Adaze is connected to him, truly connected, then his life doesn't just complicate hers. It endangers her. Every enemy he's ever made becomes hers too. And control, the thing that has kept him alive this long, is the one tool he can't use here. Not on a girl who just told a room of dangerous men she wants the truth. On her own terms. That scares him more than any threat. Later, Adebayo pulls Wu Jin aside. His voice is low, careful. The messages aren't random, he says. Whoever is sending them knows her school schedule, her walking route home, the diner, this diner, where Adana comes on Tuesdays. He pauses. Someone has been watching for a long time. Wu Jin doesn't respond. The realization settles into him. Cold, precise, unavoidable. This wasn't triggered by the diner. The diner was always going to happen. When someone made sure of it. There is a kind of person the world doesn't have a clean word for. Not a stalker, exactly. Not a criminal in the way most people picture one. Something quieter. Something that operates in the space between what's legal and what's survivable. They collect people. Not bodies, stories, family ties, secrets that can be leveraged. They find someone, usually young, usually someone with a mark the world doesn't understand. And they don't threaten. They wait. They send messages that say, you belong here. That say, come willingly, and this is easy. It's coercion dressed as belonging, and it works, because belonging is the thing most people want more than safety. Adayaz is not most people, but she's still 17, and the car is still there. She's leaving a school event, later than usual. The parking lot is half empty. The streetlights haven't fully committed, and the shadows haven't fully retreated. She walks the way she's been walking for days, steady, aware, not fast enough to look afraid, not slow enough to look careless. The sedan is parked 3 rows back. Same one, same driver. A shape behind the wheel that doesn't move, doesn't look away, doesn't do anything except exist in her peripheral vision, like a word she can't stop reading. It's not an attack, it's pressure. The slow, patient kind, the kind that says, I can wait longer than you can. Adayaz doesn't run, but her heart is doing something she won't admit to anyone. And then the convoy arrives. Not loud, not chaotic. It moves the way water moves around a stone. Deliberate, quiet, filling the space without breaking it. Min-jae steps out first, then Kyung-ho. They don't approach at ease. They position, one on each side of the aisle between her and the sedan, angling their bodies so that the driver's line of sight narrows. Blocked, not aggressively, architecturally. Young-jae stays in the car, but the car doesn't stay still. It drifts forward, slow, parking itself at an angle that controls the exit. Anyone watching from outside would see a man checking his phone. Anyone inside the sedan would see a door that just became harder to leave through, without being noticed. Then Wu Jin steps out. He doesn't rush. He walks toward Adayaz with his hands open, visible, deliberate, the way you approach something you don't want to startle. His voice when he speaks is low enough that only she can hear it. Adayaz. He says her name quietly, carefully. Your grandmother asked me to help. She looks at him. Her eyes go to his temple, to the birthmark, and something in her face tightens. Not fear, something harder, something that's been building for days. You don't owe anyone your story, Wu Jin says. Quiet, steady. Nobody gets to claim you. Not a message, not a mark, not anyone. Behind them, the sedan moves. Not forward, backward, fast, the kind of fast that isn't brave. The driver reverses out of the lot without turning on headlights, without looking back, disappearing into the street the way something disappears when it realizes it's been seen. And predators don't like witnesses, and they hate organized ones. The parking lot settles. Min-jae and Kyung-ho return to the car without a word. The space feels different now. Lighter, not because the threat is gone, but because it just revealed something about itself. Whoever was in that sedan needed secrecy more than confrontation, and secrecy just failed. Adayaz watches the space where the sedan was. Then she turns to Wu Jin. Her voice is quiet, but it isn't small. You recognized me before you met me. Why? They're back in the diner. The same counter, the same low light, but the air is different now. Not the silence of a room afraid of Wu Jin. The silence of a room waiting to see what he does next. Wu Jin reaches into his pocket and places something on the counter. A small coin. Old. Worn smooth on one side from years of being held. Adana looks at it, and something crosses her face that isn't surprise. It's recognition. The kind that comes from a memory you thought you'd filed away, but never actually closed. You kept it, she says. I kept one, Wu Jin says. The one I gave you, that was the debt. This one is what I owed after. He doesn't dress it up. The coin isn't magic. It's a promise, tied to a night when a woman set a boundary and a man didn't cross it. Adayaz picks it up, turns it over, looks at Wu Jin with the same expression she wore in the parking lot. Not gratitude. Assessment. Adana speaks next, and she doesn't soften it. I need to ask you something, she says, and I need you to hear it the way it's meant. Woojin nods once. Are you here because you care about my granddaughter, or because you want to own the answer? The question lands the way Adana's questions always land. Not cruel. Precise. The kind that doesn't leave room for performance. Woojin doesn't answer immediately. He doesn't deflect, doesn't charm, doesn't reframe it as something more comfortable. He says, I have spent my life controlling things. People, outcomes, that's how I survived. A pause. Not dramatic, just honest. What you did that night, the boundary, the no, that stayed with me. Not because it was kind, because it was the first time someone treated me like a person who could choose differently, and I didn't. He looks at the coin on the counter. I'm not here because I want to own anything. I'm here because I owe a debt I can't pay with money. A Daisy sets the coin down. Keen, I hear you, she says. Flat, not cold, careful. But I need you to hear me too. She meets his eyes, and there is no teenager in the room in that moment. There is only someone who has spent years being moved around by adults who thought they knew better. I'm not your redemption, she says. I'm not the thing that makes your story come out right. I'm a person, and my story is mine. Woojin doesn't flinch. He nods, slowly, fully, because he already knows she's right. The coin on the counter isn't enough. It was never going to be enough. It was only ever a place to start. Adebayo's voice cuts in, quiet from the edge of the room where he's been listening. The messages route through intermediaries, he says. Not direct, layered. Someone is insulating themselves from the trail, but the trail exists. And it leads back to someone who knew Amina. The name settles into the room again, heavier this time. Adana is the one who breaks the silence, and when she does, her voice carries something it hasn't carried before, not fear, grief. Amina never talked about the mark, she says. Not once, not to me. I asked her. She changed the subject every time. She looks at Adaze, at the birthmark at her temple, and the look on her face is the closest she's come to breaking. Amina was afraid of the mark. Adana doesn't speak right away after that. She folds her hands, the same way she sat in the diner hours ago, when no one knew her name yet, and lets the silence do the work. Then she starts. Amina wasn't a mysterious woman, she says. People want to make her that way now, because there are gaps. But gaps aren't the same as secrets. She was private, she was careful, and she was a good mother. She pauses, not for effect, because the next part costs her something. She used to say one thing, over and over, not like a lesson, like a belief she was holding on to. No one else gets to decide who you are. That's how she said it, every time. Adaze is still. She's never heard this, and the weight of it, a dead woman's voice carried by the only person who remembers, settles into her like something she didn't know she was missing. The room understands what the story wants to give them. A clean answer, a test, DNA, documents, something definitive that snaps the pieces into place. But Adana holds the line. Even if we find out everything, she says, and she's looking at Woojin when she says it, truth doesn't belong to whoever finds it first. It belongs to the person it's about. She glances at Adaze. Her? It's not sentiment, it's a safety principle, and Adana has watched the wrong people get the right information before. Woojin knows this. He's been turning it over since the diner. 2 paths, neither one clean. If he is connected to Adaze, if the birthmark is what it might be, then exposing that connection makes her visible to every enemy he's built over years. His history becomes her vulnerability. If he isn't connected, if the similarity is coincidence, the mark still makes her a target. Because the people sending those messages don't care about truth. They care about leverage. Either way, Adaze is in the crosshairs. The only thing Woojin can change is how carefully the answer gets uncovered, and by whom. The decision accelerates that evening. Adana is walking to her car, alone, briefly, in a way that shouldn't have been allowed, but happened in the space of 30 seconds. A vehicle she doesn't recognize idles at the end of the lot. It doesn't approach. It doesn't leave. It just sits there, the same patient, watching presence Adaze described. The message is clear without words. We can reach you too. Minjae sees it, reports it. Woojin's first instinct, the old one, the fast one, is to send someone after the car, to find it, to make it stop the way he knows how to make things stop. He doesn't. No, he says, quiet, final. We don't chase, we trace, we document, we let Adebayo finish. Choosing the slower path over the satisfying one, Adebayo calls within the hour. His voice is tight, not alarmed, focused. The threats aren't just about Adaze, he says. They're designed to separate her from Adana. The messages push isolation. Come alone. Don't tell anyone. It's a textbook tactic. Someone is trying to create the conditions for a private encounter, on their terms. The room goes still. Adaze has been listening the whole time. She sets down the coin she's been holding, Wu Jin's coin, and looks at no one in particular. Her voice, when it comes, is barely above a whisper, but it cuts through everything else in the room. If Amina was afraid, it wasn't of the mark itself. She looks up. It was of who would use it. Adebayo lays it out the next morning, not urgently, carefully, the way someone builds a case that has to hold. Preserve everything. Every message, every timestamp, every number, even the spoofed ones. The chain matters more than any single link. No direct contact with the source. Not alone. Not on their terms. If there's a meeting, it happens in a controlled space, with documentation, with witnesses, with Adaze's knowledge and consent at every step. Safe location planning. Adana doesn't move without someone nearby. Adaze doesn't move without someone nearby. The geography of their lives gets mapped, not to cage them, to see the gaps. And the last point, the one Adebayo states plainly, looking directly at Adaze. You stay in charge of your decisions. Everyone. Nobody moves this forward without you saying so. Adaze nods. Not gratefully. Firmly. Adaze could disappear. Stay hidden. Let Wu Jin's people keep her invisible until the threat passes. She refuses. I'm not going to disappear, she says. That's what they want. If I vanish, they win the silence. I stay. I live my life. And we do this with evidence, not fear. A 17-year-old who has spent days understanding exactly how the trap works, and choosing, with full clarity, not to step into it. Wu Jin doesn't override her. He doesn't suggest alternatives. He simply repeats the thing he's been saying since the diner, like a compass bearing she can check herself against. No one owns you. 3 words. He's said them before. They land differently now, not as comfort, as architecture, the frame on which everything else is being built. The source reveals itself, not through confrontation, but through its own impatience. The messages keep coming. More frequent, more specific. They push harder for isolation. Meet alone. Don't bring anyone. This is only for you. The language tightens. The tone shifts from patient to pressured. And that's the fracture, because pressure means need. And need means the people behind this can't afford to wait. They need Adaya as separated from Adana, from Wu Jin, from Adebayo, from anyone who might document what's happening. Their leverage only works in the dark. Adebayo traces the pattern, not the numbers, which are layered and spoofed, but the behavior, the timing of the messages, the specificity of the demands, the way they escalate when Adaeze stays visible and supported instead of shrinking. Someone behind this is nervous. The proof isn't a single moment, it's a chain. The messages, preserved, time-stamped, documented. The pattern, escalation tied to isolation attempts, consistent with known coercion tactics. The link to Amina, a traceable connection between the source's intermediaries and someone in Amina's past. Adebayo lays it out in a file that is methodical, careful, and damning without being dramatic. And the intent, clear. Someone knew about Adaze's mark, knew about Amina's history, and has been using both to engineer a situation where a teenage girl would hand herself over voluntarily. Not through force, through manufactured belonging. It's criminal, and now it's documented. The threat doesn't collapse with noise. It collapses the way a lie collapses. Quietly, when the light gets too bright. The messages stop. The sedan disappears. The pressure lifts. Adebayo hands the file to the appropriate authorities. Wu Jin steps back. Adana exhales, for the first time in days, fully. But Adaeze is still sitting with the coin in her hand, and the question she asked in the parking lot, the one no one has answered yet, hasn't gone anywhere. She looks at Wu Jin, quiet, steady. And what about the birthmark? What does it actually mean for me? The danger is over, not with a confrontation. It ended the way real threats end when someone refuses to let them breathe. With evidence, with process, with consequences that the system, when it works, is built to deliver. Adebayo's file did what bullets never could. It made the invisible visible. And visibility, for people who rely on secrecy, is the only thing that truly stops them. Adaz is safe, but safe and settled are not the same thing. She sits in Adana's kitchen, the same kitchen where a stuffed animal once kept a small girl company on a couch, and stares at the coin on the table like it owes her an answer. Adana sits across from her. No script, no rehearsed wisdom. I'm just a grandmother who has been watching her granddaughter carry something heavy for days. and is ready finally to help her set it down. The world will try to label you, Adana says. Quiet, not teaching, reminding. It always does. It'll point to the mark, point to your history, point to anything it can use to tell you who you are before you've had the chance to figure it out yourself. She leans forward, just slightly. You choose your name. Not the mark, not the messages, not anyone else. You. Adaz doesn't cry. She doesn't nod. She just absorbs it. Something that has been true for a long time, and she's only now hearing it said out loud. Wu Jin is near the door, not hovering, present. Adaz looks at him. So what happens now, she asks, with the mark, with all of it? Wu Jin doesn't pretend to have a clean answer, nay, because he doesn't. The mark could mean something, he says, or it could be coincidence. Birthmarks work that way, hereditary, or they just happen. The only way to know is the right way, test you choose to take, or don't. He pauses. But here's what I know for certain. Whatever the answer is, it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't give anyone a claim. It doesn't make you less yours. He's not saying it for her. He's saying it because he needs to hear it too. Then he does the thing that costs him the most. He picks up the coin, holds it for a moment, the weight of everything it came from. Then he sets it back down, in front of Adana, not as debt, not as ownership, as a reminder. I can't undo what I've been, he says, but I can choose not to repeat it, and I can respect what you taught me, 12 years ago. And today. Adana looks at the coin, then at him. She doesn't forgive him. That's not what this is. She simply sees him, as someone who could still choose differently. Then choose, she says, simply. Adaz picks up the coin one last time, turns it over, sets it down, gently, deliberately, and looks at the room, at Adana, at Wu Jin, at the quiet that has finally stopped being afraid. Truth doesn't need fear to be real, she says. Adana nods and adds, softly, like a second half of the same sentence. And family doesn't need force to be family. If this story moved you, if it made you think, made you question, made you feel something you didn't expect, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Comment below, what was the moment that hit you hardest? And not because stories like this don't matter until someone decides to pass them on, and the best ones, they echo long after the last word.